I'm pleased to introduce today's speaker, Annette Iwamoto. As the inaugural director of the Human Services Chamber of Cuyahoga County, Annette develops, leads, and manages the overall operations and ensures that it provides a forum for collaboration, mutual support, and collective voice for human service nonprofit organizations in Greater Cleveland. She was recognized by Crane's Cleveland Business 40 Under 40 in 2023. She received the Distinguished Young Woman Award from YWCA Greater Cleveland in 2019, and she was a member of Cleveland Bridge Builders in 2017. Prior to this role, Annette served as One South Euclid's first executive director, where she established a roadmap for future progress. With a proven track record in taking an idea to realization, her combination of executive leadership and direct human service experience is invaluable to the Chamber and its members. We are thrilled to have her join us today to tell her more. So without further ado, let me introduce Annette Iwamoto.
Thank you, Angela. I'm just going to take a minute to pull up my slides here today. Excited to see so many familiar faces and also people who I don't know yet. And as a virtual presentation, it also means that my parents were able to join. I'm originally from Arizona, so they don't often get to see me in action. So this is going to be a lot of fun. For many years, there had been chatter about forming a human services chamber here in Cuyahoga County, following successful models in Franklin County, serving the Columbus area, and Hamilton County, serving the Cincinnati area. A few years ago, the Center for Community Solutions was able to do a feasibility study that showed that the social services system here is fragile. After the COVID-19 pandemic, there had been increased pressure and demand on nonprofit organizations, and with much more demand for services, our nonprofits were also struggling with unpredictable funding streams, challenging in attracting and retaining employees, among other issues. And there was really a great desire from the nonprofit community for an entity like the Human Services Chamber to build a stronger nonprofit ecosystem. The work was imagined in the business plan really falls into three buckets. The first is being a collective voice for the human services sector here locally. And as we continue to build, that might look like creating an advocacy agenda that outlines certain priorities like housing or workforce issues that we collaborate on or become more vocal about, especially at the state and local level. It also means sharing regular reports and communications that document the budgetary, legislative, and regulatory issues impacting our sector. The second bucket is around network development, and activities in this area are as simple as sharing events and funding opportunities, hosting social gatherings, having candid conversations with policymakers, providing educational and training opportunities. This area is really about connecting those who work in human services with each other and with those that can help us meet our sector's priorities. And the third bucket is around shared services. And this is about allowing us to collaborate and create efficiencies, including in areas like accounting, legal support, human resources that can help us strengthen the infrastructure of our human service nonprofits, reduce administrative costs, and to redirect more time and funding towards our core missions here. So when I started just in December. I thought I would be taking this feasibility study and business plan and spending the bulk of my time getting this idea off the ground, building out what it looks like. I imagined the work to be fairly quiet, strategic, and productive. Within a month, we had about 20 member organizations. And so I was spending a lot of my time getting to know these organizations, why they were joining the chamber, what their hopes were. We put together a launch committee of CEOs and executive directors of nonprofits who were initially engaged in imagining what the Human Services Chamber would be. And they're helping me to build this initial operating structure and develop a process that we can elect a steering committee from our membership that would continue to drive the work forward. And then in January, President Trump came into office and the environment changed drastically for nonprofits. He began signing executive orders. There's been over 150 to date, many of which have direct or indirect consequences for nonprofits. A memo went out in late January attempting to freeze all federal funds to nonprofits, funding which is essential for our organizations to be able to provide services in our communities. And while this broad action was stopped by the courts, nonprofits locally and across the country have had trouble receiving funding from active grants and contracts. They've experienced slower processing times, loss of points of contact at federal agencies, and all of this has just increased the environment of uncertainty surrounding our sector today. So, very early on in establishing the chamber, it was clear that we couldn't just work and focus on building the chamber. We also needed to get to work. We had a few virtual meetings in February and March to allow people to process what we were going through, and in just the beginning. And that was really an important tool for me to understand what members needed and how to respond to it. I tried to be really clear early on that we were still very much in the early days of the chamber. And while we have to respond to the threats and opportunities of this moment, we were also looking to build something that could be here for the long haul. And one of my members said, we're building a plane that we are flying. And that's really something I've adopted as my mantra. If you've heard me talk about the chamber before, I've probably mentioned that to you. And it certainly is what it feels like, building a plane that we are flying. So what we've been doing is gathering information and sharing information. I've been synthesizing as much as I can about what is happening, what resources are out there to help us navigate these times of uncertainty. Key to this work has really been collaboration, trying to understand what others adjacent to us are doing so we're not duplicating efforts. There's plenty to do in this moment. And so just understanding where we can best plug in, collaborating a lot with our fellow human service chambers in Franklin County and Hamilton County. The staff and directors and member organizations there have really been invaluable to me as we get our work off the ground. And I'm also doing what we can to amplify what our human service nonprofits are experiencing and what a tremendous role the human service sector plays in our community. Currently, federal funding underpins literally everything in the health and human service sector. Our elected officials allocate funding for programs and services through their budget process. That money comes from the federal government. Often it flows to the states and down to counties, who often contract with nonprofits to do the work. Many of our member organizations also have grants and contracts directly with federal agencies. Executive orders and federal action show that the funding for this critical work that nonprofits do are at risk. The White House has said that many of us are engaged in actions that actively undermine the security, prosperity, and safety of the American people. This puts our human service sector under attack when the opposite is true. Nonprofits are vital to the prosperity of our communities. We partner with the government. We invest money from the federal government to provide childcare for working families, create housing and shelter for men, women, and children, increase educational attainment for our future workforce, support job training and placement, help our community access food and meet other basic needs, address mental health conditions, including substance use, improve healthcare access, assist survivors of violence, and so much more. The return of this investment of federal money benefits the community as a whole. Services are provided to all people. We work closely in our community to identify the needs and fill the gaps. People who work in the health and human service sector here locally in Cuyahoga County make up 12% of the workforce, and these employees are also family members, friends, and neighbors. Our communities thrive when nonprofits succeed. The people we serve aren't going anywhere, and their needs are not going to disappear even if the funding does. If they lose access to services, it's going to be a detriment to us all. So bringing it back to the Human Services Chamber, what's next? We now have more than 80 members that represent nonprofits that provide a broad range of services, from some of the largest social service providers in our community to organizations that may not have any paid staff. We're beginning to offer regular trainings on diverse topics like strategic grant seeking and risk assessments. Our first in-person membership meeting is coming up, and membership is still open. We have inaugural membership dues of just $100. There's an inquiry form on our website that nonprofits can use to get that process started. And key to what we are doing and will continue to do is building relationships, building them with elected and public officials so we can share what's going on in our communities and within our organizations, with members of philanthropy and also, and especially with our membership with other nonprofit human service organizations so that we can better respond to the moment. In the long term, the goal of the Human Service Chamber is to be a unifying voice and leading advocate for a thriving human services ecosystem in Cuyahoga County. Early on, when I started, a nonprofit CEO told me that if you just get us nonprofits together in a room, magic will happen. And I believe that. So we're operating in this time of great uncertainty, but we are building the Human Services Chamber to provide a platform for collaboration and mutual support so we can address our community's greatest challenges together. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much, Annette. It's great to know that this work is happening and that you are leading the charge. So, as you said, magic happens when nonprofits come together. But we know it can be really hard to bring people around a table and collaborate. So, what have you found to be helpful to get people to talk and be open to actually collaborating?
So, a lot of relationship building is about building trust. So I've been very transparent about where we're at in the process of, of forming the Human Services Chamber with our members and with other people making inquiries to help begin to build that trust. Unfortunately, we've started this chamber at a time of great uncertainty, and for better or worse, that has brought people together very quickly. I never would have anticipated that we would be at over 80 members today. I think the business plan thought 50 would be a very good goal in the first year, and we're at 80 in the first 6 months. So that has definitely brought us together. But for us to stay together and keep the momentum going, I think building trust, being transparent, really listening to our members about what they need and finding ways to provide that are all really essential.
Yeah, those are really impressive numbers. Can you paint a picture of what membership looks like? What can an organization expect if they become a member?
Sure. So I would say, depending on the week, it might be every few days or every week or so. I'm sending out updates about what's going on with the federal government. Right now, budget reconciliation is happening. So there's been at least 2 updates in the last week talking about what the major threats are that are in the budget currently being considered that may impact our clients or the people we serve and our sector, and providing opportunities of where advocacy might be available. We recently were part of a joint statement with the other human services chambers, really zeroing in on a certain piece of the budget that allowed the Treasury Secretary to designate nonprofits as terrorist supporting organizations and taking their nonprofit tax exempt status away from them without due process. Fortunately, with our advocacy and with many others, that piece seems to be removed, at least for now. But being able to share those really important pieces that are happening, that are being talked about right now to our membership, digesting what is going on in the state budget and state legislation as well. So that's kind of the main work of what we're doing in terms of providing information about what is happening. We're in an environment where sometimes what's true in the morning isn't true isn't true in the afternoon. So those updates come as I'm able to get them out, and depending on what's going on. As we continue to build, there's going to be more opportunities for training, for happy hours, getting to know each other, those types of events as well. And as we continue to build, the idea is that working with our membership, we'll be doing more shared services and creating efficiencies that really might help with back office support or other things that allow nonprofits to focus more on their missions.
That's great. And how do organizations become members? How do they join the chamber?
Yeah, so there is a member inquiry form on our website. So that starts the process. Membership is open to nonprofit organizations that provide services or support in Cuyahoga County. So organizations that may not be headquartered here are still able to be members, but they do need to have that connection to Cuyahoga County. we're being very intentional as we're getting started to create a safe space for nonprofits to be able to connect and communicate in this type of environment. So right now, membership is not open to government affiliated agencies or organizations that provide lots of funding to other nonprofits. We very much anticipate that there'll be partnership opportunities. We're developing those partnerships now, but in terms of membership, that's who it's open to. So we have that inquiry form to get more information. Sometimes follow-up conversations happen. Other times we're just sending them the payment information on how to officially become a member. And as soon as that happens, then they're on our email list and getting all the information that we're sharing.
That's great. And you mentioned some other chambers, Hamilton and Franklin. Are there aspects of the work that they do that have been successful and you'd like to incorporate here in Cuyahoga?
Yeah, so they, while serving similar purposes and missions, operate a little bit differently from each other. Franklin County is more robust in their ability to provide capacity building support to nonprofits, which is definitely something we would like to do as well. It's going to take a while to be able to build up to that type of level. And in Hamilton County, what I really like is that the membership there votes on focus areas, and then member organizations, their staff join those task force or groups, committees that develop those shared priorities. And when I was just starting out in this role, I connected with the director there, and he talked about how great it is when you get some of those largest organizations to the smallest organizations, collaborating, communicating, finding alignment on these issues to really drive forward change. And so, everything we're doing and building as the Human Services Chamber is really going to be driven by what the members want and need. So we have these models to go off of, but because we're so early on, we also have the ability to be really responsive to what the membership wants.
You already mentioned that relationships are the core of what you do. So can you talk about some of the key partnerships that have helped you as you took on this new role and tried something that hasn't been done before?
Sure. Well, I definitely have some great launch committee members, some of the executive directors and CEOs of nonprofits who had imagined this work taking place, had wanted an entity like this, who have been very supportive and understanding of getting this understanding of the challenges of getting this off the ground, providing a lot of feedback and ideas. I'm really grateful to the Center for Community Solutions, who is incubating the Human Services Chamber. I don't think I mentioned this, but I think the idea is someday in the future, the Human Services Chamber might be its own entity, but right now it's being incubated at the Center for Community Solutions. And I'm really grateful to the colleagues I have here who I'm able to say, I just heard this and I just need to digest it with someone. Having people in the office who I'm able to turn to for that, or to provide support in just the logistics of having a web page and accounting and things like that. Really grateful that the Center for Community Solutions has taken this on as something to help us get this off the ground. And to be honest, I also have to thank Bridge Builders. So many people who I did Bridge Builders with, people I've been connected through the Cleveland Leadership Center, reached out to me as soon as they saw the announcement that I was starting in this role, or very shortly afterwards. And I think that's been a huge support in building the relationships we need to make this successful.
With the language around membership being used to describe nonprofits, do you think organizations that see themselves as a charity would join the chamber, especially if they're faith-based organizations?
Yes, potentially. So, it, it's very easy to define membership terms on paper, but then as we get these inquiries in, there's a lot of blurred lines. And, I have the launch committee to go to say, hey, I got this inquiry from such and such organization. What questions do we need to ask of them? There's there's not hard lines right now necessarily for entities that aren't as easily to be defined. Organizations that have fiscal sponsors can apply for membership. So, and we're just in year one. So I think as we continue to build, there may be other opportunities for other people, other entities to be engaged as a member. And we've seen the models of that as well in the other human service chambers around the state.
So you're no stranger to taking on a role that's never been filled before. So what is kind of your personal roadmap to approaching the work?
So it's been a lot of looking at what was done already. I was really fortunate to have come in with that really robust feasibility study and business plan, which to me was a roadmap that could continue to be built onto by learning from the other human service chambers or similar entities and responding to what people were saying that they needed. It's a lot of flexibility in what my day-to-day looks like because I came in thinking that it was going to be a lot of strategic planning, slowly putting this together in a way that made sense. But right after this call, or this meeting presentation, I'm going to be diving in deep to where the budget reconciliation process is now to get that latest information out there. And I didn't expect to spend so much of my time doing that. So it's kind of being flexible and responsive to what's happening in the moment, in the day to day, but also thinking long term. There's already been so much work done on how this can be successful 5, 10 years down the line. And so still kind of keeping my thumb on that and making sure that we're putting the steps in place that will be successful long term.
And knowing you, you've been involved with CLC and a great supporter of ours for a long time. So I know that you lead with heart and lead with passion. And because this work is so vital, how do you couple sort of that passion and the logic behind the leadership role and to get the work done?
Um, I think that's a lot of sipping coffee and thinking about it by myself, and then running the ideas by other people who I trust to continue to build this, and also like not being afraid to maybe stumble or make mistakes, or maybe things don't always work the way they want to. The Human Service Chamber in Franklin County has random office hours, and they'll have 30 to 50 people show up for them. I've tried that, and sometimes it's very successful and sometimes it's not. But also just believing the people that show up are there for a reason. When you're starting something out, it can be discouraging if you have only 4 people show up for a meeting, but sometimes those 4 people are the 4 people that really need to connect with each other, and you might hear things in those meetings that you can help build off of. So kind of that flexibility, adaptability are those key skills to continue to drive the work forward.
With part of your job being facilitating shared services, how do you approach the competition that might come up or the potential conflict that might come up when you're looking for the same entities trying to use the same resources?
Yeah, I think, one thing that we've been pretty clear on is not duplicating things that are already out there. There are other group purchasing initiatives in our community and that we can tap into rather than creating it ourselves. And that is something that we will be very intentional about doing as we approach this. And I've been pretty honest with the membership that shared services that is definitely part of the plan, but to be able to do it right, it's going to take some time. It's definitely, even within the business plan, talking about being a board-led process. You have a lot of minds around how it's done in a thoughtful way that isn't, um, it might be difficult to do it without stepping on toes, but it is something that has to be done with a lot of intention and thought around it.
So what does success look like in year one and then beyond?
Well, I think in year one, success will look like people renewing their membership, who see the value in this and want to continue to be a part of it and to build it with me. and continuing to be responsive to what people need and find ways to meet those needs of the organizations and communities. Hopefully, we're building more awareness in the greater Cleveland area about how important our nonprofits are. Long term, working together, having 100 plus of our nonprofit human service organizations together working on key issues. I hope we don't keep seeing Cleveland at the bottom of a lot of lists that we're embarrassed to be on, where we stand with child poverty and lead poisoning and job employment and those types of issues. I think working together as a nonprofit sector, a human services sector, we want to make a dent in that. That's what success will look like long term.
And what advice do you have to other leaders who are sort of forging a path that hasn't yet been created?
Well, I will always go back to it's all about relationship building. So none of us can be successful if we work in silos or without sounding boards. And so I've been so grateful to be part of a nonprofit community where there's a lot of people who are out there to that I can trust and I can rely on. And leaders need that as much as they need other successful hard skills, soft skills, infrastructure. Those relationships are really key.
How can those of us on the call today support the work that you're doing?
That's a great question. So, I think in my day-to-day, I'm often focused on how we engage other human service organizations and nonprofits and sometimes other entities who are around us. But what we really need from the greater community is to be supporting nonprofits, understanding the work that we do, how essential it is to meeting basic needs in our community and addressing other long-term challenges. There's the 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 discussion that's happening at the federal level and the state level and even at the local level about federal funding going to handouts to people and to organizations. That's simply not true. That the money is being invested in people working to meet essential needs that the people who've put people in office find are important. And I think there's not a lot of understanding about how that works and how important nonprofits are. That's not just volunteers and heart that goes into it, but it's a lot of work and blood, sweat, and tears. And we need people advocating for us as well, as much as we're advocating for ourselves.
If we're not members, how can we stay most up to date on the topics that are most of interest?
Since I'm housed within the Center for Community Solutions, I would definitely make sure you're signed up for their newsletters because there's a lot of information that is put out and there are 5 things to know, the newsletter that goes out on Mondays. And a lot of that is stuff we're building on as well. We just started in December, so we don't have a lot of the communication infrastructure in place to be getting out regular updates to the public, but that's probably the best way to find information out about us now. We do have a web page that will continue to update with information, but that's probably the best way to plug in this moment.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Annette. It's great to know that this vital work is being done and that you're leading these efforts. So we really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. I've enjoyed being here.